Hello, my name is Lesley Atherton and this is my story called Artistry. The entrance door to Frankie's studio was almost hidden between two shops. On the far side, and nearest to the station, was the Wee Wash, the district's tattiest and dodgiest dry cleaners. Despite their advertising poster offering same-day cleaning for a very reasonable £2 per item, I had never seen the shop boasting a single customer. I daydreamed that the shop needed no laundry business, as it was obviously a front for a criminal organisation or drugs den, and I was sure that there would be a secret back entrance. The shop front I usually walked past displayed a garish neon sign reading Jarvis Howe Bookmaker. Its frontage, in common with many bookies, sex shops and amusement arcades, was covered in black painted boards, but this didn't deter its customers, 7 or 8 balding middle-aged men, who hovered in its doorway smoking rancid-smelling fags. As I prepared to pass the bookmakers, I kept my head down and made my usual wide arc around the small crowd and their accompanying cloud of grey smoke. The regulars at Jarvis's all knew me by sight, as I had been coming past and up to Frankie's studio for the last 4 years. We weren't on first-name terms, or even nodding terms, but I did get the feeling that they were less guarded round me than they would be around your average passing stranger. I often caught a little of their whispered conversations in the doorway. Today's snippet was a little clearer than usual. "Get a car, get a gun. Can you do that, numbskull?" A grizzled older voice. I looked up quickly to see a bearded but otherwise slick-looking elderly gentleman handing a brown envelope to a scruffy kid, who emerged from the bookmaker's entrance. The boy's eyes were blank and his hair long, yellow-brown, matted and dirty. Maybe I'd seen him before, but I wasn't sure. I'd seen a lot of lads like that round here, kids far younger than me, whose appetite for life had already been replaced with drugs, crime, alcohol, gambling, you name it. The kid caught my eye at the moment I also caught his, and this was clearly too much contact for us both. My lips pursed automatically, and the kid looked to the ground, hunching his shoulders a little more. "Beat it!" another man shouted, and whether he was shouting to me or to the kid, it didn't really matter. Both of us beat it. The scruff lurched backwards into the betting shop's doorway, and I averted my eyes from Jarvis's crowd of regulars, continuing a couple of paces further to the entrance I wanted. I was shaken, but that was nothing new. My dad had always told me that this area was rough as sandpaper, and that I'd have to be scalpel sharp to survive living here. And my dad would know, believe me. Frankie's studio was 3 floors above ground level, and stone steps led the narrow passageway steeply up to the first of 3 stories, each with its own landing and its own single set of rooms. Rawlington and Hall was the wording on a gold plaque screwed to the first door, followed in smaller letters by "Best for Legal Advice." I'd passed that sign thousands of times, yet always read the plaque. It somehow made me feel safe, though I would never trust the company with any serious legal problem, especially as the only reason the sign was there was that the solicitors had absconded some weeks back and the landlord hadn't yet relet the rooms. Bolted onto the second door was the usual hexagonal metallic sign, which made it clear that behind the door was a private flat and that no callers were welcome. On the 3rd floor, Frankie's studio door stood open. That was unusual, though the joss stick and weed-infused smell wafting out towards me was not. It was often possible to smell that heady scent even from the level below, and not for the first time I marvelled at how Frankie's neighbours at private flat no callers must be pretty laid-back people. In my building, the police would be knocking the door down as soon as an interfering neighbour witnessed you buying a packet of rolling papers. Frankie's door had once displayed a hand-painted poster with the slogan, "Walk into my trap." It wasn't one of his best artistic creations, but the door still seemed empty without it. I walked towards the doorway and I stubbed my toe against Frankie's heavy incense burner. A frankincense stick was still glowing and smoking. As I winced and rubbed my foot, I took in the view in front of me. It was clear that this studio flat had become Frankie's trap, for beneath a large pile of canvases, pre-stretched and ready for Frankie's particular style of priming, and beneath hundreds of pounds of tubes of oil and acrylic paints, which had been opened, squeezed, and were already hardening on the floor, something lay. Beneath the canvases and paint and furnishings, and beneath Frankie's cheap turquoise satin kimono with embroidered dragons, were two paint-stained feet in equally paint-stained flip-flops. They were Frankie's flip-flops. Frankie, my boyfriend, my best friend, my only friend. I didn't check for a pulse. There was no point. Instead, I screamed and shouted. But there was no point in either, as there was nobody around to hear. The first-floor company peddling legal advice was gone, and the second-floor private flat neighbours used their rooms only as a weekday evening base, commuting back to Norwich each weekend. These were the thoughts going round my head when I wandered onto the stairwell, dropped to my knees, rubbed my temples and whispered, "Oh my God." Shakily, I got out my phone to dial 999. I was still in the same semi-crouching posture 15 minutes later when two uniformed policemen appeared at Frankie's doorway. "Are you Stevie?" the first officer asked. I nodded, and he put out his hand to help me up. "Stevie, I'm John Matthews. Let me get you out of here." That was when he moved me to the top of the stairs and guided me down. Watched still suspiciously by the curious eyes of bookie punters, he sat me on the back seat and then slid in beside me. It was only many hours later, when the shock began to wear off a little, that I realised this was likely a breach of protocol. Anyway, before I knew it, I was perched on a plastic chair in a tiny interview room, John Matthews in front of me, offering a plastic cup of something brown. "Tell me what happened, miss," he said, his voice friendly and echoing against the stark and shiny walls. "From when?" I asked. "From the beginning." I took a deep breath and began.